The Grandview Hotel's ballroom sparkled brightly in the San Francisco night. Its shiny crystal chandeliers spread light everywhere, making the room look like something out of a fairy tale. Guests in fancy clothes walked around the room, holding glasses of champagne and sneaking curious glances at each other. Everyone was excited, waiting for the night's host, Sebastian Knight. He was the most popular bachelor in the city, and at 35 years old, he had decided it was time to find a wife. To do that, he planned a grand ball, which the newspapers called the event of the century. Far away in Pacific Heights at the Rothschild Mansion, a woman named Clara Bennett watched the final preparations for the ball on TV. She was the housekeeper and had worked in Sebastian's mansion for 10 years. Clara was 32 years old, with brown hair always tied up in a bun. As she stood in the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner for the mansion staff, she sighed and turned off the TV. She knew Sebastian better than any of the beautiful women at the ball. Sebastian wasn't just her boss. Over the years, he had become a friend. They talked about books, politics, and little things about life. Clara remembered when she first met him, a young man, fresh out of college, full of big ideas. She had been one of the first people he hired for his mansion, and they had always treated each other with kindness and respect. As Clara chopped vegetables, her thoughts were interrupted by Eleanor Hayes, the mansion's cook. Eleanor Hayes came into the kitchen, smiling. "Clara, you'll never guess what I heard on the radio. Mr. Rothschild invited nearly every single woman on the West Coast to his ball. They say even celebrities are coming." Clara smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "That's nice," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "I hope he finds someone special." Eleanor Hayes tilted her head and looked at Clara closely. "Are you okay, dear? You look a little sad." "I'm fine," Clara said quickly, "just a bit tired from all the work." Eleanor Hayes didn't seem convinced, but she nodded. "Well, at least we'll have a quiet evening. How about we watch a movie later? We can make popcorn and pretend we're at our own little party." Clara chuckled softly. "That sounds nice. Thank you, Eleanor Hayes." Meanwhile, at the Grandview Hotel, Sebastian Knight stood in front of a mirror in a private room. He was tall, with dark hair and green eyes. He looked confident on the outside, but inside, he felt nervous. This big ball wasn't even his idea. His PR team and business advisors had planned it, saying it would make him look like a steady, responsible leader if he got married. Sebastian had agreed because he was too tired to argue. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Nathaniel Carter, his assistant. "Mr. Rothschild, everything is ready. The guests are eager to see you." "Thank you, Nathaniel Carter. I'll be there soon," Sebastian replied. When Nathaniel Carter left, Sebastian picked up his phone. For a moment, he thought about calling Clara at the mansion. He could imagine her calm voice saying something comforting to help him get through the night. But he stopped himself. This night was about finding a wife, about moving forward. He couldn't keep leaning on Clara for support. With a deep breath, Sebastian slipped his phone into his pocket and headed toward the ballroom. The hallway felt long, and every step felt heavier. Everyone, his family, the media, even his business partners, expected him to find a wife tonight. When he reached the doors of the ballroom, he paused, thinking about Clara and their quiet chats in the mansion kitchen. Shaking his head, he pushed the thought away. It was time to face the crowd. The doors opened and the room lit up with music, laughter, and hundreds of eyes turning to look at him. Sebastian smiled politely and walked into the crowd. But even as he greeted people and made small talk, he felt out of place. "Sebastian, darling," a loud voice called out. Vivienne Duval, a wealthy woman in a bright red dress, walked toward him. "This party is absolutely fabulous. You have to tell me all about how you planned it." Sebastian smiled politely. "Actually, my team handled all the planning." "Oh, of course," Vivienne said, laughing. "A busy man like you doesn't have time for these things. That's why you need a woman, to take care of all the little details for you." Her words made Sebastian feel uneasy. He thought of Clara, who ran his household quietly and never demanded attention or praise. Excusing himself, he walked away to clear his head. Back at the mansion, Clara cleaned up the kitchen after dinner. She glanced at the clock. It was 9:30 p.m. The ball was in full swing. She wondered if Sebastian was enjoying himself or if he had met someone special. Eleanor Hayes poked her head into the kitchen. "Clara, the movie's about to start. Are you coming?" "I think I'll stay here tonight, Eleanor Hayes," Clara replied. "I still have a few things to do." Eleanor Hayes smiled knowingly. "You know, dear, sometimes what you're looking for is right in front of you, and sometimes it's on the other side of a wall you think you can't cross." Clara felt her cheeks grow warm. "I don't know what you mean, Eleanor Hayes." "Of course you don't, dear," Eleanor Hayes said with a wink. "Good night." Left alone, Clara sighed and walked over to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Sebastian might be meeting the woman who would become his wife. The thought made her chest feel tight. At the hotel, Sebastian stepped onto a small balcony to escape the noise of the party. The cool night air felt good. "Running away from your own party?" a soft voice said. Sebastian turned to see a woman with dark hair and kind eyes standing there. She wore a simple navy blue dress, not as flashy as the others. "I just needed some fresh air," Sebastian replied. "I don't think we've met." "That's because we haven't," the woman said with a smile. "I'm Isabel Hart, a journalist covering your event for the San Francisco Chronicle." Sebastian felt both relieved and a little disappointed. Finally, someone who wasn't trying to impress him. "What do you think of the event of the century, Miss Lawson?" he asked. "It feels more like a business deal than a party about love," Isabel said honestly. "But maybe love can grow even in the strangest situations." Her words made Sebastian think deeply. "You're quite observant, Miss Lawson." "Call me Isabel," she said. "And you, what do you think of all this?" Sebastian hesitated, but decided to tell the truth. "I think I'm starting to question if I really know what I want." Isabel nodded. "Sometimes, Mr. Rothschild, what you're looking for is already in your life. You just have to notice it." Her words echoed what Eleanor Hayes had said to Clara, as if both women were sending the same message. Sebastian suddenly felt like he needed to go home. He wanted to be in his big, cozy mansion and near Clara, who always made him feel calm. "Thank you for talking to me, Isabel," he said, feeling lighter than he had all night. "You've given me a lot to think about." Sebastian got ready to go back to the fancy party and take care of his duties as the host. But back at the mansion, Clara was making a big decision. She couldn't keep pretending that her feelings for Sebastian were just friendly. She knew deep inside that she cared for him more than a boss, but she also knew she could never tell him. The difference between their lives was too big. He was rich and powerful, and she was just a housekeeper. With a heavy sigh, Clara started writing a letter to quit her job. She thought it would be better to leave before her feelings made everything too hard. As she wrote the letter, tears rolled down her face. It felt like every word she wrote was breaking her heart. That night, both Sebastian and Clara were at important crossroads in their lives. For Sebastian, it was the big party full of important people. For Clara, it was the simple letter in her hand. These two very different events would soon connect and change their lives forever. It was midnight at the Rothschild mansion when the quiet night was broken by the sound of a car arriving in the driveway. Clara was sitting in the kitchen, looking at the letter she had written. She stood up quickly. Sebastian shouldn't be home so early, she thought. She folded the letter and slipped it into her apron pocket, her heart beating fast as she heard footsteps coming closer. The kitchen door opened, and there was Sebastian. His bow tie was loose, and he looked tired but happy to see her. "Clara," he said, breathing like he had been running. "I was hoping to find you awake." "Mr. Rothschild," she replied, trying to stay calm. "You're back early. Is everything okay?" Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, a sign Clara knew meant he was nervous. Actually, no. I mean, yes, everything's fine, but he stopped, taking a deep breath. Clara, I need to talk to you. The way he said it made Clara's heart race. Of course, sir. Would you like some tea? He shook his head. No, thank you. Actually, could we sit in the living room instead? Clara followed him to the elegant living room, her mind spinning. What could this be about? She wondered. Did he meet someone at the party? Am I going to lose my job? In the living room, Sebastian motioned for her to sit on the sofa. He stayed standing and started pacing back and forth. Clara, he began, stopping to look at her. How long have you been working for me? 9 years, sir, she said softly. He nodded like he was thinking hard. 9 years. In all that time, you've been more than just my employee. You've been my friend, someone I trust. Clara felt her face grow warm. You've been very kind to me, Mr. Rothschild. Sebastian, he said gently. Call me Sebastian, at least for tonight. Clara swallowed. The name felt strange but special as she said, Sebastian. He sat down next to her, his eyes serious but soft. Clara, tonight at the party, I realized something. I was surrounded by all those people, those women who were supposed to be perfect for me, but I could only think of one person. Clara's heart was beating so loud she thought he might hear it. She barely breathed as he went on. I thought about you, about how you understand me better than anyone else, and I realized what I've been searching for has been here all along. Tears filled Clara's eyes. Sebastian, I don't know what to say. He took her hands in his. Tell me I'm not imagining things. Tell me you feel the same way. For a moment, Clara let herself dream, but then the truth hit her hard. She gently pulled her hands away. Sebastian, we can't. You're my boss. I'm your housekeeper. People would never accept this. I don't care about other people, he said, his voice full of emotion. I only care about what we feel. Clara, I love you. His words hung in the air, filling the room. Clara felt like her world had stopped. This was everything she had ever wanted to hear. But I love you too, she whispered. But love isn't always enough. There are so many problems we would face. Sebastian stood up, pulling her to her feet. Then we'll face them together. Clara, I've spent years building my business, but none of it matters if I don't have someone to share it with. And that someone is you. As they stood there, gazing at each other, the sound of footsteps startled them. Eleanor Hayes, one of the other staff, came into the room. Her eyes widened at the sight of them together. Oh, I'm so sorry, Eleanor Hayes stammered. I heard voices and thought. It's all right, Eleanor Hayes, Sebastian said with a smile. He didn't let go of Clara's hand. Actually, you're just in time. We have an announcement. Clara looked at him in shock. Sebastian, are you sure? He nodded, his eyes full of determination. Absolutely. Eleanor Hayes looked at them, confused but curious. Sebastian turned to Clara, holding her hands tightly. Clara Bennett, he said, his voice clear and steady. Will you marry me? The room went completely silent. Eleanor Hayes gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Clara felt like the world was spinning. Sebastian! She started, her voice shaking. This is crazy. You just came from a party where you were supposed to find a wife. Someone who's part of your world. Someone I love, he interrupted. And that's you, Clara. It's always been you. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Eleanor Hayes let out a happy scream and ran to hug them both. I knew it. I always knew you were perfect for each other. As they celebrated in the living room, the rest of the world kept spinning, unaware of the big change happening in the Rothschild mansion. The letter in Clara's apron pocket was forgotten, a quiet reminder of how life can change in an instant. The next morning, Sebastian and Clara sat at breakfast, still amazed by what had happened. But their happiness was interrupted by the loud ring of the phone. Sebastian answered, and his face grew serious. I understand, Nathaniel Carter. I'll be there soon. Clara looked at him with worry. What's wrong? He sighed as he hung up the phone. The news about us is out. Someone overheard our conversation last night and told the press. The newspapers are going crazy. Clara's face went pale. Oh no, Sebastian, I'm so sorry. Maybe we should... Don't even think about it, he said, taking her hands in his. We knew this would happen. It's just happening sooner than we thought. Eleanor Hayes came rushing in, holding a newspaper. It's all over the front page. Sebastian looked at the headline. Billionaire chooses love over status, true love or scandal. Clara felt sick. This is terrible. Sebastian, your reputation... I don't care about my reputation, he said firmly. What matters is us. I won't let anyone tear us apart. Eleanor Hayes quietly left the room as Sebastian stood, straightening his tie. I have to go to a meeting with my company. They're probably worried about all this attention. Clara nodded, unsure of what to do. What should I do? Be yourself, he said with a soft smile. You're the woman I love, and you have nothing to be ashamed of. He kissed her quickly and left, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts. Outside, reporters and photographers surrounded the mansion. The phone kept ringing with people wanting statements. Then the doorbell rang. Eleanor Hayes opened the door cautiously, and to everyone's surprise, it was Isabel, a journalist Sebastian had met at the party. Miss Thompson, Isabel said as she walked into the living room, I know this must be overwhelming, but I'd like to talk. No cameras, no recorders, just us. Clara hesitated, but saw the kindness in Isabel's eyes. All right, Miss Lawson, what do you want to know? Isabel smiled gently. First, call me Isabel, and second, I want the real story, how you and Sebastian fell in love. For the next 2 hours, Clara told her everything. Clara sat with Isabel, telling her everything about the years she had worked for Sebastian. She shared the talks they had, the times they understood each other, and the joy she felt when she finally admitted she loved him. Isabel listened closely, asking a few questions, but mostly letting Clara talk. When Clara was done, Isabel smiled and said, Thank you for trusting me, Clara. Your story is beautiful, and I think it should be told the right way. Can I write an article to share your side of the story? Clara hesitated. What if it makes things worse? She asked. Isabel shook her head. Sometimes the best way to stop rumors is to tell the truth. Let people see the real love behind the gossip. Before Clara could answer, the front door opened and Sebastian walked in. He looked tired but determined. When he saw Isabel, his eyes narrowed. What's going on here? He asked. Clara stood up and walked over to him. It's okay, Sebastian. Isabel is here to listen to our story, the real one. Sebastian looked at both of them, his face softening. And you told her? Clara nodded. Yes, everything. I think we should let her write the article. People need to know the truth about us. Sebastian was quiet, thinking. Then, with a sigh, he said, Fine, but I want to read the article before it's published. Isabel smiled and held out her hand. Deal. I'll make sure to do your story justice. When Isabel left, Sebastian hugged Clara tightly. It's been a hard day, he said softly. The board is upset, the shareholders are nervous, and my phone won't stop ringing. Clara leaned back to look at him. Do you regret it? Sebastian smiled and touched her cheek. Not for a second. We'll get through this together, Clara. I promise. As the sun set over San Francisco, their mansion's windows filled with golden light, Sebastian and Clara stood together, ready to face whatever came next. It wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to show the world that their love was real and strong. In the weeks after the news about Sebastian and Clara's engagement broke, life became very busy. Isabel's article in the San Francisco Chronicle told their story in a kind and truthful way. Many people supported them, but not everyone. There were still challenges. One morning, Sebastian walked into the kitchen looking worried. Clara, who was making breakfast, noticed right away. What's wrong? She asked, giving him a cup of coffee. Sebastian sighed. The board called for an emergency meeting. Some of the shareholders are threatening to sell their shares. They think our relationship is bad for the business. Clara's heart sank. Sebastian, I never wanted to cause trouble for your company. Maybe we should. No, Sebastian interrupted, holding her hands. We've talked about this. I'm not going to let a group of stubborn old men control my personal life. Just then, Eleanor Hayes, their housekeeper, came in with a stack of mail. Good morning, lovebirds. More letters for you, she said with a smile. Sebastian flipped through the letters. His expression changed from tired to surprised and happy. Clara, look at this, he said, handing her a few letters. Clara read them. They were letters of support from people all over the country. Many wrote about their own love stories that faced challenges. Clara felt tears in her eyes. This is incredible, she said softly. Sebastian hugged her from behind. See? Not everyone is against us. There are people who understand. Eleanor Hayes sniffled happily. If I may suggest, you two should do something about this. What do you mean? Clara asked. Eleanor Hayes smiled. You have a platform now. People are watching. Why not use it to do some good? Sebastian nodded thoughtfully. You know what? Eleanor Hayes is right. We can turn this attention into something positive. For the next few hours, Sebastian and Clara worked on a plan. They decided to create a foundation called the Rothschild Foundation for Equality and Opportunity. It would help provide scholarships and jobs for people who face challenges like they did. They wanted to break down social barriers. Feeling energized, Sebastian left for his board meeting. Clara decided to take a big step too. Eleanor Hayes, she called. Can you help me get ready? I think it's time I face the press. Eleanor Hayes beamed. Of course, darling. Let's make you shine. Hours later, Clara stood in front of microphones and cameras outside the mansion. She wore a navy blue suit to look confident and professional. Taking a deep breath, she began. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clara Bennett, and yes, I am engaged to Sebastian Knight, but that's not all I am. She paused and looked at the crowd. I am a woman who has worked hard all my life. I believe in kindness, honesty, and respect. These are the values I'll carry forward as Sebastian's partner and in everything I do. The reporters asked many questions, but Clara answered them calmly and truthfully. She talked about her years working in the mansion, how she and Sebastian fell in love, and their plans for the new foundation. We believe love can break down barriers, she said. We want to inspire others to create positive change. At the same time, Sebastian was meeting with the board at Rothschild Tech. He presented their plans for the foundation and shared his vision for the company. The world is changing, he said. If we want to succeed, we need to change too. Diversity isn't just a nice idea, it's smart business. He showed data about how diverse companies perform better and explained how the public's support for their love story had improved the company's image. This foundation isn't just charity, he said, it's an investment in the future. By the end of the meeting, even the board members who had doubted him began to agree. When Sebastian came home that evening, Clara was waiting on the balcony. Without saying a word, he hugged her tightly. We did it, he said. The board approved everything. The foundation, our engagement, all of it. Clara's eyes lit up. And the press? I think we finally told our story our way, he replied. They stood together, watching the sun set over San Francisco. The fight wasn't over. They knew more challenges lay ahead, but for the first time, they felt in control of their future. Sebastian smiled softly. With everything going on, we haven't even talked about wedding plans. Clara laughed. One step at a time, my love. One step at a time. In the months that followed, the Rothschild Foundation for Equality and Opportunity became a huge project. Sebastian and Clara worked hard to make it a success. One sunny Saturday morning, Clara walked into Sebastian's office with a pile of papers. Sebastian was reading on his laptop, his glasses resting on his nose. More scholarship applications? He asked, smiling tiredly. Clara grinned. Yes, let's get to work. Clara nodded as she placed the big stack of papers on the table. There are so many of them, Sebastian. People from all over the country have sent inspiring stories. She paused when she noticed Sebastian looking thoughtful. What is it? She asked. Sebastian leaned back in his chair and took off his glasses. I've been thinking, what if we made the foundation even bigger? Clara tilted her head, confused. What do you mean? He smiled, his eyes full of excitement. We started with scholarships to help students, but what if we did more, like mentoring programs, places to help people start businesses, and working with universities to help even more people? Clara smiled and took his hands. That sounds amazing, Sebastian, but it's a lot of work. Are you sure we can do it? He stood up and hugged her tightly. With you by my side, I can do anything. Just then, Eleanor Hayes, their kind helper, knocked on the door. She held an envelope in her hand. Sorry to interrupt, lovebirds, she said with a grin, but you'll want to see this. Clara opened the envelope carefully and gasped. It's an invitation, she said, her voice shaking a little. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. We get invited to the mayor's charity ball every year. What's so surprising? Clara smiled nervously. Because this time, the invitation is for both of us, as a couple. Sebastian understood what this meant. It wasn't just a fancy invitation, it was a way of saying that the most important people in the city accepted their relationship. Well, Sebastian said softly, it looks like we're finally being welcomed. Clara bit her lip. Sebastian, I've never been to something this fancy. What if I mess up? He smiled and kissed her gently. You'll be wonderful, as you always are. And if anyone needs to learn, it's me. Who better to teach me than the woman who's been running my house so perfectly for years? In the weeks that followed, Clara was busy. She took dance lessons, tried on dresses, and helped with meetings about the foundation's new plans. Finally, the night of the ball arrived. The Rothschild mansion was bustling with activity. Eleanor Hayes was running around, making sure everything was perfect. When Clara came downstairs, Sebastian was waiting for her. His jaw dropped when he saw her. She was wearing a beautiful midnight blue dress, her hair in an elegant bun. You look amazing, he said softly. Clara blushed and adjusted her dress. Thank you. I still can't believe we're doing this. Sebastian held out his arm. Remember, my love, no matter what happens tonight, we have each other. That's all that matters. The charity ball was grand and dazzling. As they entered the big, sparkling ballroom, Clara and Sebastian felt everyone staring at them. For a moment, the room was quiet. Then the chatter started again. Clara was surprised when many people came up to her, smiling warmly. The wives of politicians and business people wanted to meet her, curious about the woman who had captured Sebastian's heart. While Sebastian was busy talking to some investors, Clara found herself face-to-face with Vivienne Duval. Vivienne was a rich, elegant lady who had once flirted with Sebastian. So, Vivienne said with a sugary tone, you must feel like Cinderella at the ball. Clara smiled kindly. Actually, I just feel like myself. The best part is, now I don't have to pretend to be someone else. Vivienne looked surprised, clearly not expecting such a confident answer. Later, the mayor gave a big speech. To everyone's surprise, he called Sebastian and Clara to the stage. This year, the mayor announced, we are proud to honor the Rothschild Foundation for the amazing work they do. Sebastian and Clara are not only an inspiring couple, but are also helping to change lives in our city. The crowd clapped loudly, and Sebastian, with tears in his eyes, took the microphone. Thank you, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. But the real thanks go to this extraordinary woman next to me. Clara, you've changed my life and are helping to change the world. I love you. The crowd clapped again as Sebastian turned to Clara, holding her hands. He whispered, what do you think about making this night even more special? Clara looked at him, confused. What do you mean? Sebastian smiled, then knelt down and pulled out a small box. The room gasped. Clara Bennett, he said, his voice full of love. Will you marry me right here, right now? Clara's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the sparkling ring, Sebastian's hopeful face, and the cheering crowd. Yes, Sebastian, she said with a big smile. 1,000 times yes! The room erupted in applause. Sebastian slid the ring onto Clara's finger and kissed her deeply. All the challenges they had faced seemed so far away now. The next morning, the sky was painted pink and gold as Clara woke up. She stretched, feeling Sebastian's arm wrapped around her. Today was their wedding day. As she looked at him, still sleeping, she thought about their amazing journey. From the first charity ball to the surprise proposal, everything had been a whirlwind of emotions and joy. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Clara, are you awake?" Eleanor Hayes called. "I'll be right there," Clara replied, carefully slipping out of bed. In the kitchen, Eleanor Hayes was making a big breakfast. "The bride needs plenty of energy today," she said with a warm smile. Clara hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Eleanor Hayes, for everything." The next few hours were busy with hairdressers, makeup artists, and the wedding planner running around. The mansion was transformed into the perfect place for their small, beautiful wedding. As Clara got ready in her room, an old friend, Isabel Hart, came to visit. Isabel was a journalist who had written about Clara and Sebastian's foundation. "I'm so glad you came," Clara said, hugging her. "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Isabel laughed. They talked as Clara finished getting ready. Isabel told her exciting news. The article about the Rothschild Foundation had won an award, and more love stories like Clara and Sebastian's were being shared everywhere. "You've made such a difference," Isabel said with admiration. Clara blushed. "We just followed our hearts, and the rest happened naturally." Outside, in the mansion's garden, everything was ready for their wedding. Sebastian was waiting nervously. Around him, a small group of guests, including close friends, family, and some people helped by his foundation, talked quietly. Everyone was excited, and the air was full of happy feelings. Then the music started, and everyone turned to look. Clara was walking down the aisle made between the chairs. She looked beautiful in a simple but lovely dress that showed how pretty she truly was. Her eyes were locked on Sebastian, who was staring at her with love and happiness. The person leading the wedding, a kind-looking man with a warm smile, began to speak. "We are here today to celebrate the love of Sebastian and Clara. Their love has shown us that nothing, like class or status, can stop two hearts meant to be together." Sebastian and Clara said their vows, which are special promises they made to each other. Their words were both personal and touching. They talked about trust, respect, and their promise to grow together in love. Sebastian said, his voice shaky with emotion, "Clara, you've taught me what it means to be a real partner. With you, I feel like the best version of myself. I promise to stand by you through every challenge, to cheer you on in every success, and to build a bright future with you." Tears filled Clara's eyes as she replied, "Sebastian, you've shown me that love can beat any challenge. I promise to be your partner in everything, to support your dreams like you support mine, and to work hard every day to deserve the wonderful love we share." When the man said they were now husband and wife, everyone clapped and cheered. Sebastian kissed Clara deeply, showing how much he loved her. It was the beginning of their new life together. Afterward, they had a fun party to celebrate. Sebastian and Clara danced, laughed, and spent time with their guests, each one playing a special part in their story. Later, the couple sat quietly in a cozy corner of the garden watching the party. Sebastian smiled and said, "So, Mrs. Rothschild, how do you feel?" Clara smiled back and rested her head on his shoulder, happy, complete, and a little scared about what's next. Sebastian held her closer. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. We have a foundation to grow, lives to help, and—" He paused as Clara looked at him hesitantly. "A family to start," she added softly. Sebastian pulled back a little, his face full of surprise and joy. "Clara, are you?" She nodded, her smile glowing with happiness. "I found out yesterday. I waited for the right moment to tell you." Sebastian laughed loudly with joy and picked Clara up, spinning her around. When he set her back down, his eyes sparkled with tears of happiness. He gently touched her belly and whispered, "A family. Our family." As the sun set over San Francisco, the sky turned golden and the party continued in the background. Sebastian and Clara stood close, holding each other as they thought about their future. They had faced challenges, broken barriers, and found a love that inspired everyone around them. Their story wasn't over. There would be new challenges, new adventures, and even some hard times. But with their love and the support of the people they cared about, Sebastian and Clara were ready for anything. Hand in hand, they walked back to the party, their hearts full of hope. This was not the end of their story. It was the start of a wonderful new chapter, a love story that would keep growing and touching the lives of others, one day at a time. Thank you for watching. If you like this story and want to see more, please subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss any new videos. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and share what you think in the comments. We love hearing your thoughts. Also, don't forget to check out the other videos on our channel. We'll see you in the next story.